Well, let's go to Dr. Kevin Waite, Assistant Professor in American History at Durham University, but he joins me from Salt Lake City. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Give us some context of this, please. The idea that an American president has just been charged in a courthouse in Manhattan with potential criminal offences. This has never happened before, has it?
That's true. I mean, unprecedented is a word that gets thrown around a lot these days, and you're right. To a certain extent, this is very much unprecedented. This is the first U.S. president who's ever been indicted for a crime. But there have been a lot of presidents, former presidents, who nearly missed getting indicted, and of course a long, long list, a legion of powerful American politicians who have actually spent time behind bars for convicted crimes. So in a lot of ways, Trump is just part of a long American history.
Yes, but never before to be directly charged in a courthouse with, as I say, potential criminal offences. Kevin, we always think of it on this side of the pond. We think of our judiciary as being independent, as being neutral. But I guess with the American Constitution, and I mean that on a federal level and on a state level too, I guess the truth is that the American judicial system has been political, really, right from the very start.
Yeah, that's true, Nigel. I may not share your outrage, but I think you put it really well the other day. You said this is political, and of course it's political. Everything and everyone Donald Trump touches is political. Whether this was these charges are justified, whether they're wise, whether they're strategic from a democratic perspective, those are really different questions, I think. But you're right, there's no escaping the political circus that this is going to become.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And who's to say which way this goes? But America, when you go to America, they always talk about Magna Carta, they talk about rule of law. And I'm going to have on the programme between now and the top of the hour, Alan Dershowitz, long-time Democrat. And people like that are beginning to ask questions about whether this system actually works in America anymore, or whether these divisions of left and right mean that maybe the country needs some fundamental constitutional change.
I mean, I think if you're a democratic strategist, you look at this in one of two ways, or the legacy of this indictment in one of two ways. If you're an optimist, you say, okay, well, this provides the blueprint, really the opening wedge for further charges being brought against Donald Trump for his involvement with the January 6th riot, for his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. If you're a pessimist, and I think a lot of Democrats are when it comes to these charges, you say, okay, in this hyper-partisan political landscape, we're going to see a long sort of line of tit for tat. Is any former president going to be free of charges being brought against him once he leaves office? I don't think that's going to be the outcome of these charges, but I think that's a very realistic anxiety to have.
No, okay. And I mean, I guess, America, well, we talk about division. It did go through an horrendous civil war 160 years ago. But in modern times, as an historian, has America ever been this divided?
Not within the last century, I'd say. I mean, I think the most obvious parallel here is probably Nixon and Watergate. 40 federal officials actually served jail time for their involvement with Watergate. It's very likely that Nixon himself would have, but he resigned from office, as we know, and his successor, Gerald Ford, pardoned him. You could go back actually even further to Warren Harding, who was the president in the early 1920s. His cabinet was involved in what was known as the Teapot Dome scandal, which was a massive corruption and bribery scandal that actually brought down a number of his cabinet secretaries. Harding himself, I think, may have been tried for his involvement in that scandal, but he died of a heart attack. So, like I said, near misses here, but I don't think you're wrong, Nigel. Within living memory, I don't think the U.S. has been this divided along partisan lines.